Martin Scorsese's lifelong passion for film has fueled a remarkable career dedicated to movies. A graduate of NYU, Scorsese worked as an editor until Who's That Knocking at My Door caught the attention of Roger Corman, who asked him to direct Boxcar Bertha. In 1973, he attracted critical and national attention with Mean Streets. The films that followed reflected a taste and talent for a wide range of subject matter. Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, After Hours, Goodfellas, and The Age of Innocence are just some of his films. Casino is his anxiously anticipated new film. It is another collaboration with Goodfellas screenwriter Nick Pileggi, and it stars Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and Sharon Stone. I'm very pleased to have him back at this desk for a consideration of Casino and whatever else he's been doing. Welcome back. It's great to see you. I saw you almost 2 years ago. We just happened to see each other at a dinner, or maybe...
It was almost 2 years ago, wasn't it? Yes.
And you said you've done nothing but work on
nothing
this film
but Casino until about 8 o'clock last night.
And where is it right now? Because you're going to go... When is it going to be released?
It opens... it premieres Tuesday in New York.
And you're working on it last night?
Well, minor mixing details. Yeah. And some of it was over the phone, in fact. But my editor, Thelma Schoonmaker, and my cinematographer, Robert Richardson, is out on the West Coast right now trying to conjure up a dupe negative that will be suitable to make prints from. And they'll maybe a little bit hit and miss, but they're getting there. They'll be able to do it by the end of the week.
Did Pileggi bring you this idea?
Yes, he did. Yeah, he brought me the idea 2.5 years ago. And what he brought me really was a newspaper article about a husband and wife domestic squabble on a lawn at about 7 in the morning in Las Vegas. And from that article, the whole story unravels. All the elements come together in that sequence, and that's the way we try to structure the picture. That article and that scene on the lawn was so vivid for me, and it became so meaningful because of the relationship between the husband and wife and the difficulty in their relationship and the domestic fighting and that sort of thing brought down not only themselves but an entire empire.
You must see this as larger than just another gangster film.
Yes.
How do you see it?
Well, I always imagine, I said, well, you know, I was interested in doing it. I said, but the only way to really make this one, I said, obviously I'd want Bob in it, Bob De Niro, and it's a perfect part for Joe Pesci, you know, and it'd be wonderful.
And Harvey would have been in it, except he was off somewhere.
Harvey was somewhere else as usual, making another picture. He makes 15 a year, thank God. And I said, I really need, I needed to expand the story. I said, if it's going to be about Las Vegas, and it really deals with the end of Vegas of a certain period in time, by 1983, 86. In my mind, it became something like an urban Western, where it was really the end of the old Wild West, the real end of the Wild West in a way, where things were wide open. And I figured that it had to be a picture where you could have these characters go through a real breadth of a story, the depth of a story. And I figured at least a 3-hour film. There's no sense in doing another gangster picture in the sense that I felt Goodfellas was very, very, it was really very precise about the way of life. Granted, this story deals with a higher level.
And Pileggi told me that this was a higher level.
Much higher level. And also set in an American city. And what threw me was when we started working on the script, it was January 2nd, 1994, in a hotel, Nick and I looked at Time magazine, and the cover had the MGM lion on the cover, and it said, Vegas, the American city. And I said, well, if that's truth, then
we got a story.
Yeah, we have a story here. If this is the American city. I mean, they're talking about the new Vegas, but, you know, the sense of Vegas and what it represents chance, luck, you know, everything wide open, place for, at that time, the old Vegas in a way, a place for gangsters, hustlers, gamblers, and that sort of thing. And it had a kind of romance to it, which now has changed radically, you know. But that aspect of calling it the American city of today, for the future, that could be a dangerous thing.
Now, do you have to sell De Niro on doing a film with you, or do you just call up and say, are you busy? And he says no, and you say, let's go?
Oh, no, not necessarily. It always has to do with character.
If it's a character that you think is right and he agrees, then it's a deal.
Or if I think it's right and he gets interested in it and we start working on it, because that's what we were doing on the script. We worked on a few things over the past few years where we would get halfway through the script or halfway through the script writing process, and we'd find that we just weren't able to pull more out of it for him as a character, and we dropped it.
He would decide not to do it because it's just not something
myself too. And
you
both of us realized that maybe it's just not, because it doesn't really pay for us to do pictures again unless we could find other things to do. Like Max Cady, for example, was a over-the-top theatrical, wild performance of his. And I found things that I wanted to say in Cape Fear that didn't interrupt what he wanted to say, which is the way we always worked. Raging Bull also. And like, what would we do that's new? And so we found in this particular character, the Ace Rothstein character, we found that we could chart some new territory.
What is it about him that makes him so good?
Years ago, I was not able to articulate it, but there's something about him that he could take. It's one of the reasons I had the stroke of luck of making a few good pictures with him that a lot of people kind of like. It's Taxi Driver and Raging Bull, even to a certain extent Goodfellas, where he plays people, takes characters that ordinarily are your villains in a film. And in my pictures, I like to make them the heroes in a way, or you quote hero, unquote, you know. And there's something about him that's very compassionate as a person. He's one of the most compassionate people I know, a really good man. And he just has that ability to relate that to the audience. The audience feels for him. They feel for this character. And therefore, there's no character that he plays that is irredeemable.
Yeah. So he has some way to give that audience a way to hook into whoever he plays.
Yeah. It's his face, it's his moves. It's not only his face, it's his natural instinct in a scene. Sometimes we're improvising. He'll invariably do something that is quite extraordinary.
Once you start shooting, do you direct him? I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, or is it most of it's you two talking it out before, and then once he gets it on the set,
once he gets there,
there's no sense of saying, you know.
Basically, we do a lot of we do a lot of it in well, on Taxi Driver, the script was so solid there was no need to introduce Bob during the script writing session, because Paul wrote it himself. Schrader, he wrote it himself. We got it. Brian De Palma gave it to me. Michael and Julia Phillips got it, whatever that story is. But a Raging Bull, by the time we got to do Raging Bull, we worked very closely together on the script. And in that process, because we wanted to do something very special, this is after Mark Martin had written the first drafts, and then Paul Schrader came in. And when Schrader did 2 drafts, gave it to us, we went away to an island. He took me to an island. Bob likes to go to islands. I'm an urban person. It was very strange, palm trees and things, beach, you know. And it was very nice. It was very, very secluded. And we worked for like 2.5 weeks on Paul's version. And we were able to literally make the film right there. We just made the film, basically. We said everything we had to say. We found that we were going along the right areas with each other. I also found that he was doing things that I didn't even need to know. And he knew that I was going to do things that he didn't need to know. And so that he became very, very reasonable and workable when I was doing very, very intricate shots in the ring, because he knew that something special I had in mind was going to come out of this, including that sequence where he gets beaten up by Sugar Ray Robinson, which takes only 20 seconds of film time, but took 10 days to shoot.
Most people would believe that's your best film. Do you believe that?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, to me...
Is it your favorite?
I like it, but all the films I make, I really don't go and revisit them. I don't look at them, really. Yeah. No.
But do you make...
Too personal, I can't...
Yeah, but I mean, Dawn Steele and other women in your life have always talked about one of the wonderful things about you, and I just know because she's told me, but that you, I think Barbara talked about this too, is that you infuse them with your love of movies, all about movies. You are known as having this encyclopedic knowledge of film in terms of being able, for a whole series of films, tell you every credit that pretty much on the movie.
At some point, I mean, really I can do that mainly from films in the 40s to the 50s to the early 60s. When I started working on films myself, I started seeing less of them. Yeah. You know, but I think what we're really talking about is that it's not just movies. That they're not just movies to me. They're, in many respects, having had asthma, my father taking me to the movie theater constantly because I couldn't play sports or anything. He never really talked to me very much when I was a kid, and so that was a way of talking. That was a way of experiencing strong emotional, whether it was Kirk Douglas and Lana Turner in The Bad and the Beautiful, or it was James Mason in The Desert Fox, or it was On the Town, or American in Paris, you know, any of these things. It was a way of experiencing emotion, of feelings. If I wanted to say I loved you to him, which I didn't It was through that film, you see.
Yeah.
And same way with him to me. And my mother, to a certain extent also, my older brother, too. And so in a funny way, they're not just movies to me. It was a way of expressing emotion and a way of learning a little about life and using these as examples of how to live. You can't take, I mean, not every film. What I mean by that is that it's like, it becomes about life. The pictures I make, I'm talking about, it becomes about the fact that, yes, I adore these old movies and everything, because I can never make them. I wish I could have, but I'm not. I'm what I am. I do what I do now. And in the process of making the picture, I tried to learn about myself, learn about life. And I think talking about infusing enthusiasm to other people about it's mainly about that, not about the films. I'll talk about a certain scene in another film that was made 20 years ago, and we can laugh about it, act out the whole scene, and then we go to shoot our scene, and we're sort of revved up for that energy level, you see. But there's a certain kind of truth in those scenes. There's certain kinds of truths in Vincent Minnelli's film version of Lust for Life, and scenes between Anthony Quinn and Kirk Douglas where they're arguing about painting and art, you know. And then suddenly that snaps something, and you go off into another scene for yourself, and it we try to find the truth in those things, and because the truth is enjoyable and painful and a lot of fun.
You've always wanted to make a Western or not, because you talk a lot about John Ford.
Yeah, well, I can't. How could you make a Western? You can't.
But
How could you?
You can't. What do you mean you can't?
Well, I mean, I got close in the Casino. I haven't seen it yet, but there's a wonderful scene in the desert.
Yes.
Only the guys in the desert in this one, they're two little figures in the desert. They're wearing silk suits and sunglasses, so they're not exactly cowboys, but or Lawrence of Arabia. But it's a private meeting that Joe Pesci has with De Niro in the middle of the desert, so they can talk private. But the reality is, the tradition of the Western, 1917, John Ford, William Wyler making one-reelers each week, Cecil B. DeMille coming in, and literally, with the Western, creating a new language. Not even mention Griffith and Thomas Ince and people like that who were already working. These guys was trying to figure out, if you come in left to right, what's the next cut? What's the right screen direction? They didn't even have the word for screen direction. They were inventing all this language, And so that the Western is a part of Americana that I'm not a part of. I come from a East Coast. I'm more European than that, And it's in a funny. I mean, my roots are more towards Italy or Europe than it is out west. I loved seeing Westerns when I was a kid, because that was the outdoors for me, especially those old Technicolor Westerns, or any story, any Cinecolor film about wild horses was great. Because, he was living in a small apartment. He had the beautiful wild horses running. You could see this palominos going by and that sort of thing. But I could never go near a horse. I would sneeze. Was there always, or is there a fascination on your part for violence? I think the violence, and this particular film, Casino, has got some very strong violent scenes in it. And it's a very powerful picture. There's a vice and putting somebody's head in a vice. Yeah, all based on true stories. Popping out and stuff like that. Popping a little out anyway, but but the thing about it is that it really is based on very strong. The violence itself is a matter of expression, and it's the way of life. And if it's the way of life for these people, what happens to them at the end is important. Where they wind up, like in Goodfellas. If you think it's fun for the first hour of Goodfellas, well, look at what happens to them in the last hour and a half. And in Casino, especially, based on true stories or aspects of true stories, everybody pays. Everybody pays. I mean, it's the old story: live by the sword, you die by the sword, and it's a shocking thing. And I think what happens with violence. I mean, I grew up in an area which was pretty strongly expressive in that way. We put it that way. It was right off the Bowery, and people were more tactile. They touched a great deal, and so very often, even sometimes you would swear that two people were arguing or yelling at each other, and actually they're having a fun conversation. So that kind of expression is very important to me, and the lifestyles of the characters that I'm working with, usually in these films, incorporates a great deal of violence, and so you've got to be as truthful to that as possible. And then, having said that, though, of all your films that have touched on violence, whether it's Taxi Driver or Goodfellas or Raging Bull, even in its own way, there is Age of Innocence, and you and I talked about that at length one evening. It didn't resonate for whatever reason as much as I assumed you liked it. How do you feel about that now that you put some distance between you and Age of Innocence? Oh, I like the film. I mean, the resonance for the film for me is the passion that can't be expressed. That cannot be expressed,
What do you mean?
His passion for her and her passion for
I
him.
see. The passion that could not be expressed because of the nature of the society
it's the
at the
detail
time.
of the shirt he wears and the way he's looking at her, and that was the interest of the film for me. Maybe I misunderstand the question.
No, but the question is that it didn't. I mean, you didn't get it wasn't as successful in some way as other films that you have made.
True.
Even though my sense is you had great pride in that film, and you poured a lot into it, and you spent a lot of time, and it was a departure for you. It was reaching out to go in a different direction. It was pushing the envelope somewhere else.
Right, exactly. Pushing the envelope is a good expression because if I'm going to do pictures like Casino and Goodfellas and things like that, each one like that has to have something special to it. And Casino certainly does. It has the aspect of Vegas, and Vegas is the American city, etc.
Right.
No reason to do another mob picture. Not for a long while until I can find, God willing, something comes around that I could find another angle to it that I could learn something further from, which I learned on this picture. How to tell a story, an epic story of greed, Now, the thing about Age of Innocence, it's not like I'm not silly enough to think, oh, yes, this is the film I'm going to be remembered for. No. If you are remembered, number one. Number one, if you are remembered. And if you are remembered, it's going to be the pictures that normally, it's like a Mean Streets or a Taxi Driver or Goodfellas or Raging Bull or maybe, I don't know. It's those territories where I feel I'm dealing with characters and worlds in which I can really express myself with comfort and ease and a closer grasp of a certain reality and truth. No matter how harmful or difficult that truth is to take for the characters in the film I'm talking about.
Where would you put Last Temptation?
Last Temptation's another. I tried to... in Last Temptation, it's a good question. Last Temptation deals with the same themes all these other pictures deal with, only it's head-on directly with the iconography of Christianity.
Yeah.
And maybe the others are more successful than that because of that. You see, maybe sometimes when you deal with it head-on, it's never as good as the slipping in the ideas and the allegories and metaphors and that sort of thing. But Last Temptation was something that's something I'll always go back to. I have no problem with that. I mean, that in terms of a religious film or film dealing with the saints or what really makes a saint, that sort of thing. Does
the making of movies still have the same magic for you, the same joy, satisfaction?
Well, as you get a little older, and the pictures sometimes, they all get harder.
Why?
Well, I'm trying in each one to try something new, to push an envelope, as you were talking about in Age of Innocence. I know that people say, well, yeah, that Age of Innocence is a picture where it's not going to be representative of the kind of work I've done, normally. But I want to learn something, too, as a director. And as long as I can have some sort of an umbilical cord of emotional resonance, some way in which I could feel what those characters are feeling, then I don't care what they're wearing. I don't care what age it takes place in.
Then can you go ahead?
No, I was just saying. Basically, what I do for relaxation is read novels of the ancient world by Mary Renault or Robert Graves and that sort of thing.
Can you then say that what is it you learn about character in Casino, and what do you come away with that?
Well, I think for me in Casino, what it is it's a very simple thing, and it's like a classic story of people's pride and greed. Just going to the level where they bring down themselves and bring down an entire empire.
Just when they have it all together.
Just when they had it all, And it's just, for me, the human story.
Is it their natural instinct overtaking them? They cannot be divorced from their natural instinct.
That's
greed
one
was
thing.
part of what they were.
Yeah.
And then they reach for something else. For some reason, wanted to put that past behind them, but somehow they can never cut
Never
that.
do it. And also, they're in a place like Vegas, which makes that happen. Because it's a wild place.
Why Sharon Stone? I mean, not why not, but why Sharon Stone? I don't...
Sharon, well, her name came up a number of times. Yeah. Her name came up a couple of times. We talked about her. There were a number of ladies involved with the auditioning process. They were all quite good.
And that's interesting, because you insisted that everybody had to audition.
Yeah.
And some
I had to.
Because?
Well, I want to hear what happens. I want to see. There was a certain level of energy that I wanted this character to get to, and so did De Niro. We wanted this person to get to the point where they didn't care what they were saying. They were so outraged, and we didn't want anything to be held back. And very often that happens. That's why you need to hear it come from somebody, because I don't care other films they made. it's a different way. It's a different director, it's different actors, different story, a different atmosphere, a whole other thing. We needed to just get in a hotel room and work out a few scenes. That's all. And a number of ladies were quite good at it. But when it came with Sharon has she had such determination to do this picture, to play this woman, Ginger. And she had...
expressed in what way in terms of her sense of saying to you, I've got to do this, I mean, I'll show you whatever you...
An enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Yeah, an enthusiasm.
I want it badly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, she wasn't coming in begging for it, but the idea...
No, I don't mean that,
yeah.
but I mean as a professional way to say...
Yes.
I can be Ginger.
Yeah, exactly. And now, what I also noticed about her was that she has a certain screen presence and these other films that she made. And it seemed to be just the right look for the character of Ginger to come out of Vegas in the early 70s.
Yeah.
It also looked like, she also was the closest one to look like the person, one of the persons that it was based on in reality.
Was his name
dead.
Jerry?
Yeah.
Jerry?
Yeah.
I think. Was it? I can't remember what the...
Jerry, I think it was, yeah.
Nick Pileggi was here to talk about
Yeah.
it. Let's take a look. This is a trailer, which is a way that they use to promote the film in the theater. You've seen them. It's a coming attractions kind of thing, but it gives you a feeling for what Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci and Sharon Stone have done with Nick Pileggi's script. Here it is.
He's a loose cannon.
No! Stop it! You realize what you can do? You can get us all killed!
You want to get rid of me? Here I am. Go ahead, get rid of me.
The music.
Yeah, what I did with the music was pretty much what I did with Mean Streets back in 1973. I compiled music over the past 30, 35 years and listened to... it's basically composed of music that I listen to all the time.
Yeah.
And I put them onto DAT tapes the past 5 years now. And I may have 26 tapes from A to Z and 12 from the 1960s. I have 15 from the 50s alone. And a DAT tape, so that's like 44 songs in each tape. And so I was listening, like we're talking about going to the Penthouse at the Mirage. On a Saturday night, I had the earphones on listening, and it was during pre-production, started making notes. Theme from Picnic. Yeah. Why not use the Moonglow and Theme from Picnic? Because that was a popular song at the time. You know, these were songs you could play in a jukebox in the late 50s or early 60s. Even though there were themes from other movies, it didn't matter because they were part of your life. They were heard on the radio all the time. Also, Walk on the Wild Side. Elmer Bernstein's Walk on the Wild Side, played by Jimmy Smith, is on the radio all the time. Why not use it? It doesn't matter if it's a theme. So that sort of thing. And it's a compilation of maybe, I think there may be, I don't know, 50, 60 pieces in the picture here, in and out.
Sean Penn was here, and he talked about John Cassavetes. There is a story, which may or may not be true, about you and Cassavetes after Boxcar Bertha.
Right. Yeah.
Cassavetes comes to you and says, look, you can do a lot better than this. Or if you really want to make movies, they have to be personal. They have to, well, you tell me.
He took me to his office, and it was at Universal. And he was always very funny, John. He was like, he's laughing. He looked at me. He said, come here. Yeah. And he grabbed me and he embraced me. And then he pulled me aside. He said, you just spent a year of your life making a piece of junk. He said, it's a nice picture. It's a nice film. Girl is good. The guys are good. You know, but you could do better than that, he said. You can't get stuck. I know you like B movies. I know you like the old movies coming out of Hollywood, but you do different things. You just do different things, and you should really stick to what you know. And in a sense there, I realized, maybe he's right. The reality is I'm not a Hollywood director. I mean, a director from the ones I wanted to be, like John Ford or Howard Hawks.
He understood that. That's sort of you wanted to make... You want to remake John Ford. You want to find your way to be like John Ford and
like
Billy Wilder and all those.
Right. But what I did have in mind was to combine what I knew, which was really a kind of a combination of a certain kind of reality with the actors that I saw Cassavetes and Kazan have, and mix that with the tradition of a Ford or an Orson Welles with the use of camera and that sort of thing. So I was trying to combine it all. I got close, but it wasn't completely successful in New York, to a certain extent. But it wasn't completely successful film. But I realized then that the only way to go. He said, "Don't you have something you really want to do?" And I said, "Yeah, well, there's one script, Mean Streets, that we've been working on for about 5 years." He goes, "Well, take it out, rewrite." I said, "We'll need some rewrite." "Well, rewrite it. Just what are you doing here? Just rewrite the thing, will you?" So we worked on it. A couple of friends of mine worked on it, and we sent it around, and gave us that shot in the arm we needed. Within a year, through some mutual friends, we met Jonathan Taplin, and he had the money to make the film.
What's been the downest moment for you? When have you been in this really wonderful arc of a career that is going strong with this casino opening here? When has it been for you where you questioned yourself? Never.
Not to being facile about it, but you do question yourself most of the time because it keeps you sharp, questioning yourself in terms of the work you're doing.
Yeah.
Is this the right thing to do? Is this the right picture? Well, if I have this angle on it, there's certain kinds. I didn't question myself doing Last Temptation.
Yeah.
I didn't question myself doing Age of Innocence. That's for sure. And
but you ask yourself, for example, in Casino,
yeah,
is this a different story, and is there something larger here? And how do I justify
making
for
a
me
film? Yeah.
To make this film?
Yeah, exactly. And I found the ways, and I found it's in a sense a metaphor for us if we don't watch out in this country, you know, where the compassion goes out the window and just more money, the more blood. Yeah. It's as simple as that. That's what the film shows, and it's as simple as that. And I mean, constantly, I've said this many times. What was really at the same time wonderful and scary is that when you get on the set, you realize every day that okay, I don't know anything. Okay, I don't know this, I don't know that. I think I know this. Let me work on this area here. And it's constantly a learning experience, which, as you get older, forces you to try to streamline and just get to the essentials because you have no time to play with all the other stuff.
Who is working today as a filmmaker that you look at and say, yeah?
I guess it's a hard one to talk about because I can't really talk about my friends. It's like De Palma and Coppola and Spielberg and
that whole generation.
That whole generation. I mean, there's all aspects. I mean, like Coppola's a great grand painter. And well,
you know, but do you two see the Mafia differently?
Oh yes, well, totally. You know.
Well, how?
All I know is like on the street corner.
Yeah.
Street corner stuff, nickels and dimes kind of thing, which I really...
And he sees the...
His is more... Well, granted, for what we were talking about, The Godfather, we're talking about Mario Puzo's original novel, and then the incredible Godfather 2, which is one of the greatest films ever made. And so Godfather 1 also, but number 2 just fills out it just like grand opera, you know. And that is like grand opera. It's something else. It's something else entirely. It's something I don't know. Mm-hmm. I'm not what's the word... literally, I'm not a personal recognition of that. I didn't have any experience of that. You know, I may have seen it from afar, but the kind of experience I know, the poor guys in the corner selling the wrong lenses that they just stole. Yeah. You know, that sort of thing. No, I think the people, the films I like to see, the two guys whose films I like to watch, but they're, you know, it's an older generation. It's Kubrick and Bertolucci. I like to watch their films.
They're not making many films, though, are
No,
they?
they aren't. No.
I mean, they're both alive. They both have the ability to do it. Is it because they can't, what?
I think, though, you see, Kubrick doesn't have to make that many films.
Right.
What he does is so intense, and he takes such time in taking it. You can watch one of his films, the one every 7 years that comes out, Full Metal Jacket, or particularly Barry Lyndon, or The Shining, which is not entirely successful, but the end of it doesn't matter. You could find constantly new things that they stand revisiting, even like The Shining on television when it's shown with commercials and all the words are cut out and the horror parts are cut. It doesn't matter. I'm looking at the angles. I'm looking at the lighting. Yeah. I'm looking at the psychology of the actors, what they're doing, and there's always something new. Bertolucci has a certain way that too, where he has it's a wonderful elegant quality to the imagery, which I like to watch.
What else would you put up next to Godfather 2 in your judgment?
Well, then you go back to, you see, Godfather 1 and Godfather 2 were split in the middle of the old Hollywood and the new Hollywood, the great time of the 70s. 70s was quite a time in America in making films. Well, the only way I could go, I'm, off the top of my head right now, the first thing that comes to mind is definitely, you know, the films of the older directors, the ones who formulated what film is, and John Ford, The Searchers, and My Darling Clementine, and of course Orson Welles' pictures. Citizen Kane, and even the Shakespeare films that he did, the Chimes of Midnight, which is really something. There's still something that Welles has that's so extraordinary with the use of camera. And then there's, in my mind, you know, Fellini. We talked about
that when he died.
Yeah, 8.5. 8.5 being a watershed picture where it's just stopped. Everything that came before is now changed, you know. Yeah. And yet there's another great one of Fellini's, I think, Vitelloni, the very first one he did, you know. That number, there's so many, you know, there's such a wealth of material.
Does Bob want to direct? De Niro.
Well,
I know he did Bard's Tale.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he seems to be. Although we don't really see each other that much. Maybe on his birthday or my birthday, where I go downtown over where I am. He's with me or something, and we really get to see enough of each other when we're working. So then he's usually off to another picture.
Yeah. But when you choose a project, he's the first person you think about. I realize it's character defined.
It's character defined, and invariably he comes to mind because it's quite honestly, I mean, there's so many other good actors too at the same time. But I have a relationship with him, and I know one of two things. One, certain things we've done, so maybe we shouldn't deal with that issue. In other words, maybe another actor, or if I get to that, I've already done it with Bob. Why do I want to do it with another actor anyway? So maybe I shouldn't do that story. But if there's something new to find, he's still very. We still have a very close relationship. So we could try to dig this stuff out, and that's why I think of it. And it's again that empathy that he has for some of the most unappealing characters. He has a strength and a dignity for these people that comes out of himself, I think.
What's next?
Next is a life story of the Dalai Lama, actually. Yeah.
You're directing it?
Yeah.
And who's going to star?
We haven't cast it yet. Asian actors.
Yeah.
It's called Kundun.
And Richard Gere will be the consultant to the film?
No, we have many, because he's around. It's the life story of the Dalai Lama, written by Melissa Matheson.
Now, why do you want to do that?
Well, it's a fascinating story. Here's this guy, here's this man who's head of a country, religious and spiritual and political head of a country. And the country's been based basically on the spirit.
Right.
For whatever reason, but basically it's the spirit. It's a country that I don't think had a road, if I may be mistaken, may not have had a road going into it until World War II. Didn't need a road, basically. They went interior, they went inside themselves. And it then comes into conflict with a government, and a massive government from China, which is not just the Chinese people. It's not them, really. It's the Marxist government, which is purely materialistic. Right. And then what does he do? How does he survive? What does he do to keep that world of the spirit alive, even knowing that it has to change? And certainly it's got to change completely, because it will never be the same.
How does a man of the spirit also deal with the fact that he has to every day confront very practical questions of survival for his people?
Yes, and basically nonviolence, because that's the tougher road, the nonviolence, that's for sure.
This from a man who once thought about being a priest.
Yeah.
Great to see you again.
You too.
Pleasure.